Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our final panel, not the least of which is going to be about a moment or a movement. Where are we in Black spend or spend with Black media? The griot was the main historian and the chief storyteller of the village. During slavery, Blacks were forbidden from learning to read and write. So our tradition of verbal history is even more important. There's an undeniable influence that Black culture has on society, and mainstream media has continually made the promise to recognize, celebrate that culture. But evidence has shown as soon as popular social hashtags wane in trending, the promises of increased ad revenue to Black firms and Black-centric advertising suddenly dries up. Advertisers have made pledges to increase spending in Black media, but have they been true to their promises? We turn to two key figures in shaping culture, in the shaping of culture and how we as Black people are represented. Producer, entrepreneur, media executive, and considered one of our foremost culture thought leaders, the CEO of KTC Ventures, Keith Clinkscales, and Deborah Gray Young, managing partner of D. Gray Young, Inc. Consulting. Welcome, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our panels before have been bringing it. We're bringing up the rear, so I need you guys to do the same. So I'm gonna go a little bit to something that we wrote in our program, and that is the contributions of Black Americans have historically and intentionally been denied, diluted, erased, and otherized. Yet, and in fact, we're now at this point where they're throwing us out of the libraries. They're throwing us out of the schools. And if we also allow the Black media companies to die, then who tells our story? Who tells our story in a public way that our children, our kids, our families, our community can continue to see themselves and have the pride in themselves? So first and foremost, so that's what we want to talk about today. Who is going to be telling our story if it's not going to be the Black media? So first though, when I was doing the research on this panel, aside, from the fact that Keith is one of my big brothers from FAMU, I was trying to figure out how this thing is even working, right? Please explain the structure of media, because why do we have a large media company that sells to a Black-owned media company? Why don't corporations go directly and spend their money directly with Black media companies? Why do we have the interim? So I got a little confused as how even the structure of the industry. Can we start there? Either one.
Well, I mean, okay. I think if you go back to the earliest days of Black media, you look at John Johnson and and Ed Lewis and Earl Graves and Kathy Hughes and people like that. They were able to go ahead and make people pay attention to the Black consumer. What people learn very quickly and what companies learn very quickly is how powerful the Black consumer is. It's not something like, oh, this is something we're just doing because it's a good thing to do. No, if you want to move certain things, you've got to talk to this audience, and they see it come across. Now, you get in media is always tough, but the main thing about us is having that voice and having the courage to bring it up again and again and again. We just lost the great Harry Belafonte yesterday, and he was somebody, was it yesterday or a couple of days ago? He was somebody that not only was a great artist, but had no problem bringing social impact to the table, making sure that it was heard. That type of impact always kept the Black voice relevant, and And I think, the main thing about advertising, the whole purpose of it is to create, it is what lubricates the economic system. And that's how things work.
And so, why do small black media companies have to be assigned or get their work from the larger non-black firms? Because I understand that in some of this, corporations will have their own media consultants. Those consultants go
You're
through.
talking ad agencies.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, okay.
Help me understand that.
So, in a word, capitalism.
Okay.
In a word, it is a structure built to retain the money and the power. And stop me when I really go left. But that's essentially why. So brands work with major advertising agencies, and they empower those agencies to make decisions about where their ad budgets are invested.
Okay. So we know that there was more money that was supposed to flow into these black ad agencies and into black media after the events of the past few years. Are you seeing the trend stay? Or are we seeing the wind?
No, I mean, you're talking about the Floyd,
We call it the Floyd effect.
the Floyd, the tragedy, that tragedy, a number of companies, said that we're going to go ahead and put more money into minority business development. We're going to put more money into advertising, and they stuck to it. It wasn't just talk. They not only made the effort, but they made sure that they were there with it. Now, the important thing is to make sure that you continue to do it, because at the same time, this is a difficult time for media, not just black media, but media in general, because of the change. You have a technological change, you have a digital change, you have a number of things going on. So, what was right just a few years ago is suddenly outdated today, And then you have a new realm of entrepreneurs coming up, and you have people, like the sister that runs Blavity, and you have a new management and ownership of Essence. You have different things going on with what is black media. But the important part is that we continue to have it. You continue to have the voice, so that when we go to the advertising agencies, we can have a discussion. And then you got to keep in mind also the beauty of black people. So when Rihanna was on the stage at the Super Bowl, in the middle of the Super Bowl, $7.5 million for 30 seconds for ads. She's pulling out a Fenty compact right in the middle of the damn thing, and that's another level of advertising that we just have not
That
seen
was a boss
before.
move.
It wasn't just the move. It was just the whole attitude, and you can see the power of what's happened. And then when you go to stores like when you go to Ulta or Sephora, they don't have black sections anymore. Why? Because everybody wants Fenty. Everybody wants to go ahead and find a way to have that touch. And they don't tell black women you can't wear pink. You can do what you want to do. Whatever those ladies say is right. That becomes the style. What our culture represents is influence. Influence is power, and influence is what makes advertising go. And that's and there's some scariness to that.
So I'm going to ask you, same question, but also, so if there's influence and power and money to it, how do we keep it for ourselves? And are we really getting the full shake? I think across the board, maybe some have stayed the course, but has everybody stayed the course?
Oh, no.
Do tell.
So I want to go back just a little bit to give some historical perspective to what Keith just shared. And that is once upon a time, there were a number of black agencies in business for the sole purpose of serving the black community, and they all did quite well until the general market agencies decided, oh, you don't need a black agency to do this. We'll just hire one black person or two black people, and right.
Sounds like that diversity position.
Yeah, that was the forerunner actually, and we can do the same thing as black agencies can do. Of course, they were lying, but hey, we have come to learn that people are okay with folks lying, right? But, we've come to learn that. So that's the backdrop. So the black agencies, and there were quite a few of them, as general market agencies decided that they could do the same thing or even do it better, particularly when it came to media placement. They would say, oh, we can place it cheaper, we can get better pricing. And so a lot of black agencies didn't make it. And so where we are now, in addition to this seismic change that the landscape has experienced because of technology and politics, they would like you to believe there's a separation of church and state, but I'll come back to that. There is this concentration of power, to use your words, and the black agencies that are left, they are challenged with retaining or even keeping a foothold on the business that they do have, and for the most part have been relegated to a consulting role or just developing creative or giving a point of view on a strategic approach.
Okay. But I still have a problem. Because we are still having massive, what did Ebony say? PR, moving beyond PR solves? Like, we still have PR solves that are happening even to this day. So how could the industry, how could large advertisers, large consumer companies think that they could do without a black agency?
Because they haven't lost enough money yet.
So those PR solves haven't cost enough.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
So
also,
and as soon as the news cycle changes, they're good.
look, I also don't know if that's a black agency is always the right thing, because the power of black works across the board, and that's the thing that, so when you look at there's 6 major advertising agencies, not black, but major advertising agencies, and when you look at those 6 advertising agencies, the number of executives, except for one brother runs, but other than that,
Right.
You are really locked out in terms of the percentage of people at the executive level. And then back in the day, it used to be advertising agencies, they would have the agency side of the business and they would have the creative side of the business. And the agency side of the business also did the media placement. Nowadays, because of technology is so deep, you have 3 places. You have the agency that deals with the clients. You have the creative that makes the ads and the pictures and things like that. And now you have a whole nother media group. And they are really technologists that are, putting things on YouTube, putting things on Yahoo, putting things on Google, TikTok, finding different ways to do things across the board, along with television, along with all the regional ways to do it, and doing it digitally all over the place. And that's a good thing. These are not evil things that are going on. But during this process, the rise of people of color in these positions has diminished substantially. So this goes all the way down to, like, we have to find more ways to get involved in the technology. We've got to find more ways to get into what's going on in Silicon Valley, and we must have more discussions with Madison Avenue, because we are coming too late, and the entire media discussion that I just mentioned, we are left out of it. There's very few people of color that are making the decisions, um, and that leaves a lot of things out. Now, do all the agencies, they do a pretty good job of finding black people. They're easy to find. Why? Because they're powerful. They work. Nobody's going to say, oh, if you're launching a new car, boom, Big George Foreman, that movie's coming out. Here you go. Here's where you place it. Fast and the Furious. Are you serious?
Who's not going to take it?
Black Panther?
Yeah, Black Panther. It's easy to go ahead and find it because quite frankly, folks perform. So it is important that we get our voices up. The urban leagues of the world. Make sure we get our voices up, especially with Madison Avenue.
So it's not an or, it's an and.
Yes.
Yes.
Black and positions within the
yes,
major
and it's
six.
important not to, like I heard was said before, how can we do, sometimes you don't want to do it just with us. You want to do it together, In my career, I got to learn how to make films, I learned how to make films because the folks at ESPN allowed me to learn how to do that because you were part of it. The more you can be part of things, the better chance you have of learning a way to get in there and bring it to the whole marketplace. It's not a question of do you have the ability to reach the folks. It's do you have all the other other pieces.
Can I just pick up on something that Keith talked about, though, that I think is really important? So Keith talked about the change that happened, right? And one of the things that I think is really critical as the industry was making this seismic change because of technology, what it also did was it changed the business model. So if you have the Ebony and Jets and Essence and I don't know, the TV Ones of the world or Black Enterprises of the world that were traditional magazine publishers, for instance, when everything started to go digital, that is a completely different business model. However, the investment to make that change was steep, and because the business model was different, so if you were selling a page in Ebony for $50,000, I'm making up the number.
Not by much.
Exactly. So if you're selling a page of advertising in Ebony, 15 years ago for $50,000, the business model in terms of what you're selling digitally is completely different. So the numbers in terms of investment didn't match up. And so to Keith's point about, us not being in the room, as it were, it was almost impossible for us meaning Black-owned media, to keep pace. And that's why you see such an anemia when it comes to Black media now, because we used to have a lot more Black-owned media outlets. But when that seismic change happened, moving to digital, the business model was such that most couldn't make the investment or the kind of investment needed. Now, truth be told, the general market media companies had challenges as well, but their pockets were deeper.
Okay, so our audience is full of major advertisers. We have our friends from Pepsi, our friends from B of A, our friends from AT&T. If they're trying to resolve equity and go beyond just hiring and really start to think about other ways in which they can bring about economic equity, what would you say to them about how to tackle how their companies spend money with Black media, on Black media, or how important it is that they start to put the pressure on the industry to hire Black professionals?
I think the important thing is when people, anybody who's pressed to do something, they'll do it for a moment. You know, if my mom used to tell me to clean my room, tell me to clean my room, and I would do it, but when she stopped, I'm like, am I going to clean her room? No, because she didn't really explain to me why it was important for me to clean my room. She would, anyway, I don't want to go too far, but the point I'm trying to make is that the pressure does not always work to build a business. Sometimes you want to find ways with the companies especially, and we've got to look at some folks that are doing good. What General Motors has done in terms of making an open, here's a number, we're going to spend this percentage, and we're going to continue to spend this percentage, and we're going to spend it all the way through 2028. Is it perfect? No. But did they put a number to it? Yes. That's a good thing. The agencies, sometimes they are prepared for it. Other times they are holding the black media a lot of times to the same kind of standards that they hold the larger companies to, and that's not quite fair. But that's okay, because at least you're in the discussion, and then you begin to learn from it. And then the other thing is just finding more and more partnerships, because the one thing that I've realized through all this stuff is that the consumer, the black consumer, works. It's just so finding more and more ways to interface with them across different things is the best opportunity. And moreover, whole industries, the cable business is getting hit up in different ways, and when you really break it down, black women pretty much invented the reality television, and we can discuss for another discussion, not for the Urban League, but we have another discussion of the benefits and the goods and the bads of the whole thing. But at the same time, the impact has been there. You see it, in sports, how powerful. The NFL, their broadcast rights are over $100 billion. The NBA's broadcast rights are coming up. They're going to be somewhere in the $70-80 billion range over 8 to 10 years. That comes from the fact that we watch that happen. Now, we're not the only ones. Everyone watches it, but we really help to drive the whole thing. So this is where we've got to think more on that side of things. We've got to think more on the not the pressure side, but on the participation side.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Collaboration is key. Collaboration is key, and that's what Keith is talking about. So if you've only got 2 million readers, followers, or whatever, and somebody else has 5, together you all have 7, as opposed to trying to go it alone. Collaborate. So that when you go to a brand, you have something more of substantive to serve up.
So I'm going to go a little differently. So if we are, with all of the work that's being done to erase, throw our history out, what can the combination or the partnership between media and corporate America do to help prevent that or help counter that? Is there a possibility that corporations, our allies, our authentic allies, can actually work to put our history out there through the media, through their ads?
Well, okay, the challenge with this is that before we get to us,
Yes.
journalism in general has a problem. It's hard to find journalism right now because there is so much pressure on getting likes and getting different clicks and things like that. So a lot of times you're not really dealing in news, you're dealing in other things. And then, when you get to some of the situations that need to be pulled apart journalistically, it doesn't happen. What happened with Breonna Taylor, needed to be pulled apart journalistically, but it really hasn't. And we're in a place right now where you have this, what happened with people of color in COVID. There was a time at the beginning of COVID where a number of black people believed that black people couldn't get COVID. Not like not like COVID. No, can't get it. And then not only can you get it, you're going to lead the league in it. I mean, and that was something we did not have a way to talk about. We don't have enough ways of journalism. So for the urban leagues, for the NAACPs, for the National Action Networks, got to put pressure on all the companies that have journalistic ties, including Google and Yahoo and Facebook or Meta, along with all to make sure more people of color are involved in that process, in the general news, and at least find more ways to participate so we get that message out there.
In your consulting practice, how do you do that?
Well, so one of the things I think that's really important that Keith just mentioned in terms of black media, it's really important, I think, for corporations to understand the role of black media. It's because it's not just all entertainment. The role of black media is, and always has been, to keep the black community at large informed about itself. Because left to its own devices, we know what the general market, mainstream media will do. We're vilified, every single day. And so the role of black media becomes very important to keep us informed about ourselves, but to also show the real of who we are as a people, because we're not all, half crazy and acting like we don't have any home training, right? I mean, it's a few of us, but there are more of us like Keith and I. Well, some would argue that I'm a little crazy too, but there are
I think
more.
we all are.
But there's a lot more positive and powerful things going on in our community and our communities that you just wouldn't know about. And mainstream media has absolutely no interest in letting that be known, like none whatsoever.
So this is all about equity, all about solving. What are you solving for today? And what would you have us, whole audience of folks that are, allies and justice fighters, and we're not media specialists, but we all need to be in this fight. Where do we fight?
Yeah, I think it's arrogant to come and say we're going to solve.
Okay.
This problem has been around before I got to it, and before we got to it, and long after. Building on the steps of great ones that have come, over the last couple of years, we've lost some major players in the space, and some things have happened. It is important to build on it, and also to figure out, like in sports, you don't play for where the ball is, you play for where the ball is going to be. That's you play for where it's going to be. So where the ball is going to be is going to be in a technological place. It's going to be in a digital place. There's a whole thing going on now, like with ChatGPT, AI. But as great as it is, as awesome as it is, the one thing that Chat can't do, it can't reproduce fly. It can't reproduce culture. That is something that we as a people have something. When you listen to Drake do his thing, that Drake thing, that's not easy. Now, his voice can be knocked off very easily, as we've seen. But that's a whole nother problem for the record industry to deal with. But in terms of some of the things that are going on, this is the time we have to go ahead and make sure we work to get involved right now with Silicon Valley. We're behind. We're way behind, and we've got to get involved. Look, when you think about Instagram, think about just think about young black girls in your world. Just think about that. They made Instagram. I understand a lot of people look, but when it comes down to really flipping it, you know, it was them. And you think about how many other different technologies that have come through that influence is what has made it work. We've got to be, there on that. And it doesn't always have to be like ownership is great, but participation, and making sure you're there can be sometimes better, because the good thing about participation is you don't have to pay for the failure. You don't have to pay for the things that sometimes don't go right. All of us know Facebook, but there was a number of different things that came along that this didn't work for whatever reason. There's Netflix now, but there's been a number of different folks. They're very expensive things to undertake. So to participate and make sure that we're in from the beginning, I think that's something that's incredibly important.
Thoughts? He said, no solve, build. So in thinking about your consulting practice and what you're working on now, where are you working with your clients on the most?
So one of those things is recognizing the importance of participation through collaboration, right? Because 10% of nothing is still nothing, but 10% of $1 million, it gives you a lot more to work with. And there's been some resistance, I think, for a while now, about this whole collaboration and participation piece. It's like, well, who's going to control it and who's going to make more money? That is irrelevant if nobody is making money. So the participation is important in terms of what you get exposed to. Throughout the course of my career, I recognized that there was always tons of information that never made its way back to our community. And so I appointed myself as the person who could, gather that information and share it with people like Keith, although Keith never really needed our help, but other people in Keith's position who had a blind spot, right? And so helping people understand what the blind spots are. What are brands looking for? What is it that you need to be talking about when you walk through the door, and not making an assumption about what that is, because that will take you down a path that is not even close to realistic. And I know, Keith, I know you've seen that happen where, somebody has made an assumption about what a brand should do as opposed to what a brand's appetite was.
Yeah.
And it not work out.
We only have a couple minutes, and I want to give you, I know I
Okay.
have not done either one of yours expertise justice. So what I want you guys to do is take these last moments. You're speaking to young professionals. And Keith, I still have your Urban Profile magazine. Very first magazine he created while still at FAMU. And we know all of the work that you've been doing. You're speaking to young professionals now. What do you tell them, since we need more participation? Since AI is going to impact the way things are going forward versus where they came from, what do you tell them? What do you tell them to do now?
Get technical, get digital, and no matter what, don't get discouraged. Look at some of the folks that are out here. Look at our friend Will Packer. Look at where, how he came up and what he's been able to do. Look at the different things that are going on and the power of the culture. But most importantly, don't think that you can't learn it. You got to get into it, and you got to go ahead and do your thing. And you'll make mistakes, but that's okay, because believe me, the other folks that are there, they've done the same thing.
Ms. Deb?
I would say learn the business, right? So depending on what your interest is, learn the business of it, learn the business models, and don't be afraid to innovate the business models. Um, and put some blinders on, meaning, so everybody wants to be Instagram famous, but, do you want to take any bets about how long before the next thing comes along? Because I promise you, Instagram didn't see TikTok coming, right? So learn the business of it.
Excellent.
That's well said.
Thank you, everyone. And I think this was an eye-opening, and we got a lot of nuggets out of this. I want to thank both of our guests for sharing with us and really helping us to understand it's an and, it's not an or. It's not about solving, it's about building. It's about getting technical and actually having the courage and the understanding that we've been here before, we can do it again. There's nothing that is too great for us to learn. So Black media companies are the heart and soul of our representation in the media, and it's up to us to support them so that we can ensure that our voices are heard and that our stories continue to be told. And now, please welcome back my boss, the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Urban League, to close us out. Mr. Lambert?
Thank you. So I just want to say this. This has been a rich conversation. All of our conversations today have really been rich and powerful. Last night, we had the opportunity for some of our speakers that came in early to take them to dinner. And I said to all of them, I said, I don't want you to hold back. I want you to deliver the goods. And I anointed them to come and do that with all of you and all of us today. And I got to say that they delivered in terms of doing that. Let's give all of our speakers, presenters, subject matter experts, again, another round of applause. Also, as we're closing out, I do want to take an opportunity to thank certainly our host and sponsor here. We're in the studio of AT&T, the Forum, so I want to thank them, particularly to Rodney Martin, member of our board of directors. So thank you so much, Rodney. I also want to thank, and I don't see her right now, but I know she's still around, Ebony K. Williams, who joined us to certainly lead many of our conversations today, and also our very own Kimberly Corbin as well, which I refer to as Madam CFO. So, yes, thank you, Kimberly. Really thank you so much as well. And then, yes, please give her applause. And then finally, I want to say to all of the companies that supported us on the event, this event, really our sponsors, thank you so much. And so, because we know that you are the ones right now that are really in the trenches in terms of moving this conversation, this discussion forward. Many companies did reach out to the Greater Washington Urban League at the point that George Floyd was murdered, and many of them said, Mr. President, would love to see what we can do, as I said earlier in my remarks. And my response then and my response continued to remain, and is no different now. If you are serious about going beyond the metaphor, then I'm happy to have the conversation. And so that's what these conversations are about. Folks who are serious about this business of going beyond the metaphor, really kind of getting this right and making it work. So I want to close out. I want to thank all of you. Stay tuned. Those companies who are not with us for this and were not able to join us, know that the Greater Washington Urban League is coming to your doorstep to have this conversation as well. Take care. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.